Starting off today's show, we're going to do a segment that came in mind for me when it came to many fans of certain teams asking me about their start. I feel like there have been plenty of teams who have started off 2-0 and their fan bases are wondering, what should I believe going forward? Should I believe in this team? Is my team real? Is my team fake, not to be considered a contender? And then when you look at some 0-2 teams, fans are already asking if their season is over, although after 2 games. If you missed Tuesday's episode of the Zach Curl Sports Podcast, I gave you an example of a team that started off 2-0 that I really believe in. That is Matt Rule, Sam Darnold, and the Carolina Panthers. They will be in action on Thursday Night Football tonight going up against the Houston Texans. But we're going to talk some teams that I feel like their surprise start may be for real, it might be fake, but one thing that they share in common is that the fans didn't necessarily expect the start that they got off to, and I wanted to talk about each one of these teams. So without further ado, hit the music, let's get to it. The first team I'll start off with is the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the Raiders are for real. I think they're a playoff team. I really do. And I totally understand that in years past, John Gruden and the Raiders, they've been a team that has gotten off to fast starts. And they've been a team that once the regular season hits week 14, week 15, week 16, they usually don't win. But I've been impressed with their defense to start. I think Max Crosby is one of the 10 best defensive players in the NFL, or at least he's playing like it. Yannick Ngakoue has been a big-time addition there for Vegas. Jonathan Abram is making some big-time hits, and it was clear to me, watching the Raiders against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday at Heinz Field and watching Derek Carr sling the ball all over the field, I was really impressed with the way the Raiders played, especially coming off the Monday night game at home to open that stadium with fans against the Ravens. To be honest, I thought going into Heinz Field on Sunday was going to be a huge letdown spot for the Raiders, but they came to play. Now this week, don't lose to the Miami Dolphins coming into your building with Jacoby Brissett under center. It's a big game for the Raiders, but I'll say this. Their quarterback is playing at a very high level. And Derek Carr, he went to Fresno State. He came into the league, was drafted by a Raider team that wasn't really run properly. And he had some good years, his first couple years in the NFL. But I feel like finally he is getting the respect he deserves when he is put in an all-right situation. Like Darren Waller could play, Henry Ruggs could play, Josh Jacobs could play, and John Gruden could coach offense. So the Raiders are a team I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they have in store coming up. And I've been really impressed with their 2-0 start. I'm actually buying the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll go to the NFC and give you a team I'm selling. And it's crazy because they've gotten off to this 2-0 start. And I think if you would have asked me so far after 2 weeks, who is the most exciting team in the NFL? The answer for me might just be Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. And I promise, I'm really not trying to sound like a hater. If you would have just watched Kyler Murray's film throughout the first 2 weeks of the season, you would have literally thought that this guy is the best player in NFL history. He's that exciting, he's that dynamic, he's that athletic, he's that fast. He's a phenomenal player. But here's the problem. I don't think the style of play Arizona is doing these first 2 games of the season is going to be able to translate to late December football when they're going up against some of the best defenses in the NFC and really some of the best defenses in their division. Like the 49ers defense could play. The Rams defense could play. I still believe in Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, the Seahawks, the foundation that they have built there. Give me the big game Cliff Kingsbury has won. That Sunday night game against Seattle last year, fine, but what happened to Arizona when they could have taken advantage of that win and made the playoffs? They lost back-to-back games to C.J. Beathard and John Wofford. Everyone tells me how much talent the Cardinals have, and I get it. But at the same time, Cliff Kingsbury, when he was at Texas Tech, He wasn't able to coach a good defense. He hasn't been able to produce a winner ever as a head coach in the NFL. And to be quite honest, the only reason why the Arizona Cardinals were able to beat the Minnesota Vikings in one of the better football games we've seen so far this year is literally because Matt Prater, their kicker, was able to hit a field goal from 64 yards, and the Vikings missed a field goal from 37 that would have won them the game. Arizona got lucky to get out of there with a win. I totally understand. You're never going to apologize for that. But I want to see Arizona play Seattle, the Rams, the Niners, and some of the other top teams in the NFC until I'm officially buying stock in them. We mentioned the Vikings. It seems like a pretty good transition. I'm selling the Minnesota Vikings. This team has very 6-11 vibes to me, especially after the way they totally choked that game away against the Arizona Cardinals. The Vikings are just a team that causes pain. There's nothing really else to say. Just when you think one thing goes their way, you feel like they're never able to get the job done, and they're never able to get out of their own way. And it's unfortunate because Mike Zimmer is on the hot seat, especially the way the Vikings have lost their first two games. I think if you're a Viking fan, the most frustrating part is your team hasn't played particularly good in the first two games of the season. And with that being said, you could easily be 2-0. Like, you could have beaten the Bengals in overtime if Dalvin Cook doesn't fumble the football. If your kicker can make a 37-yard field goal, you beat the Arizona Cardinals. And now you have a game against the Seattle Seahawks when they come into your building. And let's be honest, Seattle isn't going to be too happy with the way their game against the Tennessee Titans ended when they choked away a 14-point lead late in the second half. Like, that clearly didn't sit well with Seattle. Kirk Cousins is an all-right quarterback. I think you could win with him, but we know historically how he performs in big games. I think this Viking team is out of gas. I think Mike Zimmer, as great of a run as he's had, they might just need change there, and that goes with the GM position as well. I don't think Rick Spielman has done a terrible job generating talent, but at the same time, for whatever reason, it's not working, and he needs to do better. I'm selling the Minnesota Vikings. The Indianapolis Colts are a very fascinating case study in this, because this was a team that going into the season, I picked to win the AFC South. And I totally understand that the Carson Wentz haters are going to be in full display just because of the fact that this guy can't stay healthy. The fact that he has 2 sprained ankles right now, if you're a Colts fan, that's super frustrating. And this is a guy that has gotten injured many times throughout his career. But at the same time, I still don't think the Colts regret trading for him for 2 reasons. One, who else were they going to get? Jacoby Brissett? Let's see how he does under center this week for the Miami Dolphins against the Raiders. And I don't think Jacoby Brissett's a bad quarterback, but the bottom line is, I think outside of the quarterback position, the Colts at least thought with this defense, this offensive line, young weapons like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, that they were going to be good enough to win the AFC South. And really, that roster around quarterback, like if Andrew Luck was still the Colts quarterback, I think there is no question about it that this team is a Super Bowl contender. I really believe that. I think everything besides quarterback is there, and given the familiarity that Frank Reich and Carson Wentz had with working with each other, I still don't think the Colts regret it. And it's unfortunate because in that game against the Rams, like, Wentz made some frustrating mistakes, but he was still competitive. He showed some signs. He at least tried to get the Colts back in the game, and Jacob Eason gets put into the game when Colts fans needed their quarterback to make a play the most, and obviously that didn't end well. Once Carson Wentz got hurt on the final drive, you kind of knew the Colts were in trouble. But hey, it's a huge game. No matter who's under center, right now it looks like it's going to be Jacob Eason. However, Carson Wentz hasn't officially been ruled out. Colts Titans this Sunday. That's just a monster spot for the Indianapolis Colts. If you're a Colts fan, you're going to want to do whatever you can to somehow, someway find a way to win. You have to play desperate. And there was a good chance that both of these teams going into this spot were going to be 0-2. And the Titans found a way to win. The Colts need to do something similar this Sunday on the road in Nashville, no matter who's under center. I'm buying the Colts, by the way. I think as long as Carson Wentz stays healthy, they're the better team than the Titans. The Denver Broncos are the next team I'll bring up. I think what is the problem for Denver is that, look, I'll give them credit for their hot start. They've played really well, and they do deserve credit for winning games this season that they should win, just because of the fact that last year, there were plenty of games where I feel like the Broncos just flat out didn't show up ready to play against opponents they were very capable of beating. And they beat the Giants and the Jaguars. I'm not going to lie, those could be 2 of the 5 worst teams in the NFL. I'm just being honest. And they have the Jets this week. Go beat them, go to 3-0. But then after that, the schedule gets much, much tougher. They have Baltimore. They have Kansas City twice. They obviously have the Raiders twice. They have the Chargers twice. And look, Teddy Bridgewater has played really well throughout the first 2 games. But I just think when it's 3rd and 8 against some of the best defenses in the NFL, and you're starting to find yourself in big-time shootouts with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and even Derek Carr I throw into that category, you're going to need your quarterback to make a big-time play. So maybe the Broncos do find their way in the playoffs, especially with a 7-team playoff this year. But the AFC West is still a tough division. I'm not 100% comfortable in saying that the Broncos are better than the Raiders just because their quarterback in Vegas could make plays and could tear defenses apart in big-time moments. I like Teddy Bridgewater. I'm just not sure if he could do that. Vic Fangio is a great defensive coordinator. I don't necessarily know if I trust Pat Shurmur as an offensive play caller, although the Broncos' offense has looked good. Against 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, I'm just not buying the Broncos right now, especially when their stock is still really high. Only after 2 okay wins, I'm selling the Denver Broncos. I'm also selling the New York Giants as we end this segment. I told you, that game against Washington that they lost on Thursday Night Football is a game that gets coaches fired. It was that bad. The Giants had so many opportunities to win that game, and they were not able to take advantage of it. And if I'm a Giant fan, that's a problem. The New York Giants, their defense was good last year. It kept them in a lot of games. But against Taylor Heineke, when their defense needed to make big plays, obviously Bradbury had the 1 big interception. But if you're a Giant fan, it's unfortunate because it didn't even matter because Jason Garrett's play calling was that bad and was that conservative that they didn't even attempt to go for a touchdown. If the Giants score a touchdown there, they win the game. If the Giants execute on the long deep ball to Darius Slayton, they win the game. And it's unfortunate because Daniel Jones played a good game overall. I don't think he was the reason why they lost, but Darius Slayton, that throw wasn't great, but the ball still should have been caught. And if he could just make a play there, the Giants win. And any time in this game, the Giants had a chance to put the Washington football team away, including when Dexter Lawrence got lined up offsides. And I know there's plenty of controversy of whether he was offsides or not. The bottom line is, it shouldn't even have came down to that point. The Washington football team could have been kicked out of that game and kicked to the curb at many points. The Giants refused to do it, and ultimately, they paid for it. I'm selling the Giants. I just don't know if they're going to be mentally tough enough to recover. And the bottom line is this. The Giants haven't won that much in the last 3-4 years. With this loss, they are now tied, or they have sole possession of the squad that has the most losses in the NFL within the last 4 years. That can't happen. Unacceptable loss for the Giants. I'm selling.